In a world where every day brings new challenges and trials, some people seem invulnerable to life's adversities, while others are constantly stressed and anxious. Have you noticed how some individuals see every event as part of an exciting drama series? A minor accident on the road turns into a personal insult. A delayed response in a messenger feels like a betrayal, and a mistake in ordering coffee is perceived as a catastrophe of universal proportions. But there are also those who seem to have an incredible ability to remain unfazed in any situation. They seem to glide through life, not allowing trifles to disturb their inner harmony. An insult? Only a shrug of the shoulders. A setback? Easily adaptable. It's as if they're tuned into a different wavelength that most of us can't reach. And so, a legitimate question arises. What is the secret of their calmness and peace? What do they know that we do not know? After all, many people live like balls in a pinball game, bouncing randomly from one reaction to another, completely dependent on external circumstances. Bad weather can ruin their mood. An unanswered message undermines their self-esteem, and a strange look from a stranger makes them spend hours analyzing what happened, as if they were solving a complex crime. To tell the truth, each of us is familiar with this condition, when a trifling problem suddenly occupies a disproportionate amount of space in our thoughts. The question is, what distinguishes people who are able to recover quickly from such situations from those who get stuck in them for a long time? The answer lies not in luck or special talent, and certainly not in achieving some level of emotional enlightenment. The secret lies in consciously refusing to participate in a game whose rules are inherently unfair. Most people mistakenly believe that their feelings are directly dependent on external circumstances. They believe that the world around them dictates their emotional state, forgetting that the true source of their feelings is their own interpretation of what is happening. Consider a simple example. Let's imagine a situation on the road when someone shows an obscene gesture. In this case, there are two possible ways of development of events. The first one is to take it as a personal insult. Let this incident spoil the mood for the whole day and endlessly replay it in your head. The second is to treat the situation with irony, assume that this person has more serious reasons to be annoyed, and just move on. A single incident can be perceived very differently by two people, and the difference lies in the meaning they attach to it. Surprisingly, this principle applies to all aspects of existence. A careless remark by a casual passerby only hurts when a person assigns significance to it. Rejection only hurts when one allows it to define one's identity. A bad day can ruin an entire week only when one keeps replaying it in one's head like a broken record. The truth is that most of the problems that trouble people are not actually happening to them, but in their minds. They are trapped in an endless cycle of reacting instead of consciously choosing what deserves their attention and energy. Once a person realizes this not only theoretically but also in practice, dramatic changes occur in their life. The world ceases to be a series of accidents that happen by themselves, but becomes a space that can be cognized and shaped at will. In this regard, a natural question arises. How can one switch one's consciousness and change the perception of reality? As soon as a person realizes this principle, his existence undergoes irreversible changes. The essence is that the determining factor is not the event itself, but its interpretation. However, it must be recognized that theoretical knowledge and practical application of this principle are two completely different levels. In situations where personal grievances arise, disrespect is shown, or injustice is felt, there is a natural temptation to forget rationality and give in to emotional reactions. The question arises, how do you train your mind to become resilient to these everyday stimuli? How to reach a state in which external factors lose their power over the inner world? The first step towards this is to consciously stop wasting one's energy aimlessly. Many people give away their peace of mind as if it were a free promotion. For example, after receiving a negative comment on the internet from a stranger, they spend hours on internal arguments and worries. When strange looks are thrown at a person in a public place, it becomes an occasion for deep introspection and reevaluation of every social contact. Even the slightest unpleasantness can mar the entire day. This behavior is like running a business in which all resources are given away for free. There comes a point when you have to start charging, asking yourself questions. Does this person's opinion pay my bills? Will I remember this incident a week from now? Is it really my concern, or am I just absorbing someone else's negative energy? In most cases, about 90% of the time, the source of stress lies in other people's projections. If someone shows rudeness, it reflects their own problems. If someone expresses doubt, it indicates their limited thinking. If someone is disrespectful, it says more about their character than about the character of the other person. It is important to reflect. When a person reacts, when they get upset, when they allow something to control their emotions, it is as if they are saying, "Here, take my peace. I don't need it." However, the truth is that peace of mind is the most valuable asset. Those who achieve true triumph in the race of life, who march confidently through the world, realize a simple truth. The vast majority of things going on around them do not deserve a drop of their precious energy. And this is where the most interesting transformation begins. When a person stops responding to provocations, when he stops interacting with negative manifestations, when he becomes an unshakable bastion of calm, amazing metamorphoses begin to take place in his life. People who previously sought to throw him off balance suddenly lose their power and influence. Events that used to mar every day are now hardly noticed. The world ceases to seem an impossible burden, because a person is freed from the burden that should never have been carried on his shoulders. And once one feels this mental freedom, there is no turning back. However, there is one more important element in this complex puzzle, which allows one not only to shield oneself from the negative impact of the surrounding world, but also to turn its energy to one's benefit. And this is where the real magic begins. But first, it is worth recognizing that most people do not really seek to control their emotions. It is not uncommon to hear statements about the desire for mental balance and peace of mind. But when fate throws up trials that cause irritation, many cannot resist the temptation to give in to negative emotions. Having received an unpleasant letter from a manager, a person is ready to mentally submit a resignation letter, and a phone that is discharged to 1% is perceived as a universal conspiracy against him. It seems that people find pleasure in letting their emotions override reason. They make excuses. "I can't help it, it's my nature." But the key point is that victory comes at the very moment when you manage to curb your reactions. And this applies not only to personal life, but to all aspects of existence. It is no coincidence that the most influential people, whether in important negotiations, in communication, or even in sports competitions, keep equanimity. Losing control over emotions, a person gives the reins of power in the wrong hands. Someone who knows how to take you out of yourself gets power over you. A situation that is capable of striking a nerve begins to control you. When a person allows their emotions to continually react to external stimuli, the world around them begins to shape their reality, like a puppet being pulled by strings. But what if we imagine a completely different scenario? Imagine that the individual becomes impervious to manipulation, an emotional stoic whose armor is impervious to provocation or chance. For example, a barbed, veiled attack on him does not cause him a shadow of irritation. Attempts to throw him off balance fiasco, not finding a response. Sudden vicissitudes of fate do not make him despondent, but only stimulate him to adapt and move forward. It is important to emphasize that we are not talking about ignoring problems as such, but about a resolute refusal to let them dominate the personality, to subordinate it to their will. When a person achieves this kind of emotional stability, those around him begin to treat him with a noticeable change. Provocations and attempts at manipulation become less frequent, giving way to respect for his personal space and boundaries. But the most valuable gain is the ability to make decisions based on rational thinking and conscious intentions rather than impulsive emotional reactions. After all, most people don't realize that emotional reactions are essentially automatic, subconscious reactions, and the world is known to adore those who are easy to control. Marketers hunt down impulsive desires like predators. Toxic personalities flourish when they hit a nerve, and control systems rely on those who can't look at a situation with a detached and critical eye. Consider this. Predictability in reactions makes an individual vulnerable to manipulation. However, when an individual rises above automatic responses and takes the position of an observer rather than a mere reactor, the door to true freedom not available to most opens before them. It is in this state, when external factors cease to determine the inner state, that real life begins to unfold according to its own rules. Of course, the question arises, how does one achieve such a state? The key to sustainable change lies not only in realizing this concept, but also in a profound restructuring of the entire response system. So, how do we break the vicious cycle of emotional reactions that take away control? It is important to realize that detachment is not an easy task. Otherwise, everyone would have mastered it long ago. The problem is that many people don't even realize how much of their behavior is driven by automatic reactions. From a very young age, we are instilled with the habit of reacting instantly to external influences. If someone insults you, it is assumed that you should fight back. If a situation is upsetting, it is considered natural to vent our emotions. It's like living with an open control panel where everyone you meet, be it a boss, a random passerby, or a social media post, has the ability to push your buttons at any time. But what if there was an option to turn that dashboard off completely? This is where the concept of emotional immunity enters the scene. It's not about ignoring emotions or becoming an emotionless robot. It's about retraining the brain to interrupt the chain of automatic reactions. The first step on this path is to observe rather than absorb. Most people tend to absorb every situation like a sponge. If someone around them is stressed, they adopt that state. If someone is rude, they take it as a personal insult. Instead, you must learn to take the position of an observer. Imagine a situation. You are in a coffee shop, and the barista is having a hard day, and he is snapping at you for no apparent reason. The average person will immediately absorb this negative energy and wonder, why is he being rude to me? It is not uncommon to hear the phrase, I have not done anything reprehensible, after which the mood of the interlocutor noticeably changes. However, an outside observer is able to see what is happening without getting involved in the situation, noting to himself, she's probably going through a rough patch. The event itself remains a fact, but the key difference is that it does not penetrate deep into your emotional sphere. This is detachment in action, allowing the world to exist around you without letting it pass through you. The second important step is to master the art of the pause. Have you ever noticed that the most unfortunate decisions are made in a flurry of emotion? This is because emotional reactions, bypassing logical thinking, take over reason. The solution is simple. You need to pause before reacting. If you hear hurtful words, pause. If you feel anxiety rising, pause. If you feel the urge to argue, pause. This brief moment of silence gives your brain a choice: to react impulsively or to respond consciously. And it is in this choice that your power lies. Here's a valuable tip from the pros. Before you respond to anything, ask yourself, Is it worth my energy? Overwhelmingly, in 99% of situations, the answer will be no. The third step on the path to getting rid of negativity is depriving drama of its breeding ground. Drama, whether in personal relationships, professional life, or social life, is fueled by backlash. It is a kind of ecosystem that flourishes because of the emotional responses of those around it. Rumors and gossip only spread when people are involved in their discussion. Toxic personalities only continue their destructive behavior when they receive the desired response, and conflicts only reach their peak when both parties are actively involved. When the feeding of this system stops, it inevitably collapses. Let's imagine a situation. Someone tries to provoke a conflict, but instead of the expected reaction meets only a smile and calm removal from the source of irritation. In this case, the provocateur is completely powerless. The truth is that people who seek to provoke negative emotions do not seek truth or understanding. Their goal is to establish control. When they fail to elicit the desired response, they lose that power. That is why the most dangerous participant in any interaction is the one who does not give in to provocations and does not react to stimuli. As soon as a person starts practicing this behavior, he or she notices amazing changes in the attitude of others. People begin to show more respect, less often try to get off balance, and those who do dare to do so quickly realize the futility of such actions. Acquiring emotional immunity opens the way to steadfastness of spirit, making a person virtually invulnerable to external influences. At this stage, however, a legitimate question may arise: how to put this concept into practice when emotions seem all-consuming and insurmountable? This is where the final stage comes into play, readjusting the mechanisms for processing emotions before they even have a chance to gain strength. It is understandable that this raises the question: what to do in situations where emotional pressure is at its peak and detachment seems impossible. This is a valid concern that often becomes a stumbling block for many. After all, truth be told, if a person is used to reacting in a certain way throughout their life, instant change seems utopian. But the key here is not to suppress emotions, but to rethink the very process of processing them. The first step on this path is to train the mind like a muscle. Often, people treat their emotions as unbridled wild beasts, uncontrollable, unpredictable, and requiring only humility. However, emotions, like muscles, can be trained and developed. Surely, each of us has paid attention to the surprising fact: some people remain calm in the most critical situations, while others lose composure because of trifling troubles. The secret lies not in some inborn peculiarity, but in the ability to train their nervous system, forming new reactions to stimuli. The human brain has a kind of factory settings, stable patterns of behavior based on past experience. If, over the years, the brain has associated stress with panic, it will continue to produce that particular response. Similarly, if criticism has triggered a defensive reaction, it will occur automatically. The key technique is to break the habitual pattern every time the impulse to react emotionally arises. You need to pause and ask yourself the question: what if this time I react completely differently? Instead of getting irritated, you can try smiling. Instead of hastily defending yourself, it is better to shut up and listen. Instead of panicking, it is better to take a deep breath and just observe what is happening. At first, the brain will resist the new setting, protesting and demanding a familiar response. No, we have to react, we always do. But with each new attempt to change the reaction, the person is laying down new neural pathways, gradually reprogramming their nervous system. However, if one persistently suppresses natural impulses, over time the brain undergoes a remarkable transformation, readjusting to new rails. One day, a person may be surprised to find that situations that previously caused a storm of emotion no longer have any effect, as if the old reaction simply disappeared. This is a sure sign of victory over oneself. The second important step toward emotional resilience is controlling your internal dialogue. Most people don't realize how much their internal monologues shape the way they relate to the world around them. So the next time you feel like something is blowing your mind, it's worth asking yourself, what story am I telling myself about this? How useful is this interpretation? In the vast majority of cases, the answer will be no. The third effective technique is to emotionally disarm those around you. This simple trick can dramatically change lives. When a person is expected to react in a certain way, and he instead demonstrates complete calmness, it is discouraging and confusing. Remember the situations when, in response to an insult, a person does not get angry, but laughs and agrees with the offender. For example, to a reproach for stubbornness, you can reply, "Yes, it is one of my best traits. You always take things lightly." I prefer that approach. You really don't care, do you? Exactly. This technique, known as emotional aikido, is the skillful redirection of another's negative energy back to its source. When a person demonstrates insensitivity to other people's outbursts, he or she is unequivocally asserting his or her independence and immunity to other people's influence. There is nothing more discouraging to a manipulator than realizing the futility of his attempts to throw someone off balance. Paradoxically, the more restrained the response, the more respect it commands. People tend to test the boundaries of what is permissible in an attempt to exert control over those around them. However, when faced with an impenetrable wall, aggressors tend to retreat. It is important to realize that steadfastness does not mean a complete absence of emotions. Rather, it is the ability to control one's feelings without letting them override reason. It is a conscious choice to succumb to the influence of circumstances or to determine their outcome. Ultimately, when a person stops wasting energy on empty provocations, he or she gains the freedom to live by his or her own rules, determining the course of his or her life. There comes a moment when real changes in life take place. If these words have resonated in your soul, it is worth expressing your gratitude because, let's be honest, if the reader got to this point, it means that he has learned something valuable for himself. And if there is a desire to receive even more materials touching on important topics, it is worth subscribing to the channel, because this is just the beginning of a great journey. See you in the next issues, where new facets of self-development and personal growth will be revealed.